Ready? Play.
Welcome back to another episode of Painting Lines. Last week we did our annual 2024 awards show. Definitely check that episode out if you haven't. It was a great one. And this week we'll be covering Nick Kyrgios' return to the tour later this month. Del Potro finally hanging it up after his exhibition match against Djokovic, and this new Nordic battle between Ruud and Rune. So, Aidan, let's just jump right in. What are your thoughts on Kyrgios coming back? Are you excited? Do you even care? Just how do you feel?
I before we kind of jump into his comeback, let's go back and talk about his career overall. So obviously he came onto the scene kind of 2014 to 2016 or 17, and he was like this rising star in the sport. For a couple years there, 2018, 19, he was a decent player near the top. And since then, he's played like one full season. So one of the last 5 years. And when you look at that and then you take it to today, how can we really get an accurate idea of how he's going to play when he comes back? Like he did do well in that full season in 2022. Obviously, had maybe the best achievement of his career, making that Wimbledon final. But no one really knows what his comeback is going to look like. So excited, I don't know, but I will be interested to see what happens.
Yeah, I mean, I'm personally very excited just because I feel like a lot has come out about Kyrgios recently. He was heavily featured on Breakpoint on Netflix. He's been dropping podcasts. He has his own podcast too. So I feel like he is kind of that misunderstood player, as cliche as it sounds, but I'm excited because I feel like I know him more as a person. And, after that Wimbledon final run too, it's kind of hard not to, think he might do pretty well.
Yeah, I get that, but also when you see a guy like Kyrgios, where he has all these other things going on, he has his own podcast, he also has all these things. It's hard to know whether he's actually really committed to tennis or if he's just like, I'll keep doing it because I can, but I'm really focused on other things.
Yeah, I mean, either way, he'll be back for Spain end of the month. That'll be his first tournament, and then I mean, assuming Australian Open.
Yeah, maybe it'll depend how he does.
Exactly. I know those wrist injuries because I think that was the latest one that kept him out. Obviously, no joke. So gonna keep an eye on that. But he actually trained with Novak recently, and he said his wrist was feeling great. And Novak even said, "Hey, you're looking like 100%, like you never even had an injury." So
I mean, honestly, at this point, I think if he wasn't ready for the comeback, it would just be kind of stupid to come back. Like,
yeah,
why take 2 years off or 4 out of 5 years off and then rush the comeback right at the very end?
yeah. And I'm curious about his commentating too, like how serious of a career that will be. If maybe it would make financial sense for him to forego playing tennis to be a commentator.
Well, I mean, that's kind of goes back to what I was just talking about a little bit ago. Like, does he actually love playing tennis? Because if he loves playing, then I don't think anybody would be willing to be in the commentary box instead of playing. But if he's just like, oh, this is just my best way of making money, then maybe it would be better for him to just go on to commentating.
I got a bold prediction. So I want to set the line at where you think he'll be ranked by the end of the season, by the end of the 2025 season. Do you think he'll be over or under number 50 in the world?
So you want me to make the bold
I want
prediction?
you to make the bold prediction and then I'll tell you my thoughts.
God, it's really tough without having seen a single one of his matches. You know what I mean?
That's why it's a bold prediction.
I mean, I'll be honest. I think I'm gonna go under. Or actually, no. I'm gonna go outside of the top 50.
Okay,
Uh,
so over.
because yeah, I guess over. Sorry, it's weird with rankings.
Yeah, I know, right?
But I'm gonna go outside the top 50 because I don't think he plays a full season.
Yeah, I was with you there. I originally set the line pretty optimistically at 25. And then I remembered he doesn't even play clay season. So just that, I think 50 was a pretty good set as far as like where he'll be. I think I'm just gonna have to go
Here's what I'll
under.
say. I'll say
Yeah.
I think if he plays the full year, he'll be under 50. But if he stops halfway through the year, like I wouldn't be shocked if he does, he'll probably end up outside.
Okay. Makes sense. And your thoughts, what about 70?
It's tough. It's this
Yeah.
similar idea. I mean, 70 is a little bit more like if he can get one result, then it could
Right.
hold him in there. So really tough to say. Yeah,
All right. So I guess we'll have to check back on that this time next year.
100%.
Either way, though, I mean, let's hop into Del Potro's exhibition match against Djokovic. This was named the last challenge. It took place in Buenos Aires, his hometown, in front of 15,000 fans. And his last like official ATP tournament was back in 2022, the Argentina Open. And this was kind of just like a last hurrah. You know, it's not a sanctioned match, but it was like his official last match.
Yeah, his last technically professional, right? Because he's getting paid, I assume.
Yeah, yeah, technically. He actually won too, 6-4, 7-5, which I thought was pretty funny.
Yeah, I mean, to me, it just looked like Djokovic just wasn't pressing him, which I think is the right move. Obviously, like Djokovic has no benefit of him winning the match or exerting too much. So, kind of just going out there playing, trying to make it a fun match to watch, and I think it was the perfect result, close enough that people were entertained with the points, but he didn't end up winning, and I think it was great for Del Potro to end on the win.
Yeah, I mean, I'll be honest, I watched the extended highlights, like a 30-minute highlight, and it was very boring, the actual tennis. But
Yeah,
that's kind of what an exhibition is. I mean, I think the most entertaining parts were the emotional aspect of the match, like him hanging his signature bandana over the net at the end of the match as kind of like a symbol. Him crying several times during the match too. And then that tribute video where I think like Alcaraz, Monfils, Federer, all the top guys made to him and his contribution to the sport.
yeah. I mean, I just think it's like I was kind of saying is they neither guy was like trying to really go all out, and like you said, that does make it a little bit boring because nobody's really trying to chase down the tough balls. But in the end, it was kind of just a ceremonial match. It feels like.
Yeah, no, kudos to Djokovic, to your point, just kind of letting him win on his last match. I feel like you have to. And Djokovic kind of gets that rep as being the villain. So I feel like this is him stepping out of that role. Like he's obviously not going to do that in Argentina in front of his home fans.
Yeah. No, no. I mean, like it's you look at someone's last match like a Nadal where he's obviously playing in the Davis Cup.
Hmm.
So he loses because he's actually in a competitive match. Whereas here it's obviously a little bit different with uh it being an exhibition.
Yeah. Have you seen that video probably about 10 years ago? It was Djokovic playing wheelchair tennis with a handicapped person, like in an exhibition. And
Yeah.
then he just gets up out of the wheelchair and smashes it.
No, I mean,
That
I
was
think that
so
that whole
funny.
thing was great because it did show
Yeah.
how difficult it is. Like I remember what like Djokovic, they have the mic connected, and Djokovic was like, "Oh no, don't hit it behind me."
Yeah, I think it can bounce twice in wheelchair tennis, right?
Yeah. Well, I mean, if we could only
Yeah,
bounce once, it would be
a little like
almost
not much.
impossible.
Yeah, not much tennis.
Yeah. It'd be like
Uh,
serve and that's it.
yeah, so I think this would be a good time to touch on Del Potro's legacy. I mean, so he won the 2009 U.S. Open. He won two Olympic medals. Unfortunately, none were gold. He won a silver and a bronze. He finaled in the 2018 U.S. Open, actually lost to Djokovic, pretty ironic, and had 22 ATP titles.
He's a testament to what injuries can do to a career. Like for a basketball comparison, he's like Derrick Rose. It's like on his day, especially when he was healthy, he could just go head to head with any of the big four. And with these injuries, it just completely throws a wrench into his career. Going back to that 2009 U.S. Open, he was only 20 years old at that point, and he
Wow.
dethroned the four-time reigning champ at the U.S. Open, Federer. And then immediately, I think 2010 was like his first injury, and that
Mhm.
just continuously plagued him throughout his career. And honestly, 2018 I think may have been actually his peak ranking when he made those U.S. Open finals in 2018. But yeah, I just think it's a really tough situation to think of a guy that really could have competed much closer with the big four had he stayed healthy.
Yeah. Does he remind you of a Dominic team, or do you think he was on another level there?
Well, I think it felt like team was it's an interesting comparison because I feel like team it felt like he could compete and maybe beat each of the big four. Like he could be on the same level of them as them. I feel like with Del Potro, it felt like on his day, he was actually a step ahead.
Oh, so you're saying he was better?
So on
Like
some days.
talent wise, yes. Okay.
Like you look at some of his matches and he'll be like playing Nadal if you look at their head to head, and he'll beat him in some match like 6-2, 6-2, 6-2. And you're like, what? That
Smothered.
happens? But with team, I feel like it was more okay, they play a very close match and team ekes it out.
Yeah, that makes sense. I'd be curious to see Del Potro, like prime Del Potro in this day and age against the Sinner and Alcaraz. See kind of where he would stand up there.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to see. I mean, especially with they kind of have a similar a little bit
hmm
on the forehand side at least, just
Exact, just
clobbering the ball.
straight power. Yeah. All right, let's talk about this Nordic Battle. This is a new exhibition that's taking place over 2 days, like two separate matches, one in Norway and then another in Denmark. And this is Ruud and Rune, so both guys respectively at the top of their sport in their country. I feel like this is big for Ruud, especially because there's really no, Norway doesn't have any famous tennis players, whereas Denmark at least has a few. Just a little rundown. So the first match played in Norway, Ruud won, and it was funny. This crowd was only 3,500 people. And then 2 days later, they flew over to Copenhagen to play the second match, and this was in front of 17,000 people. So you could just see like the difference in, I guess, interest or
Yeah,
like
I looked into that a little
hype.
bit, and it really you think about it, it's like there have been some other like really good Danish players, like especially when you look at like the women's side,
Mhm.
Wozniacki. But Ruud is like I think by far the biggest Norwegian
Yeah.
player ever. So it does make sense. I don't think they even really have the ability to house that many fans at the Norwegian arenas.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, they probably have a bigger arena for like watching, I don't
Hockey,
know, hockey, ski jumping, like
yeah,
on the outside.
yeah,
They crush it though. They bring home those winter golds in the Olympics.
100%.
But anyway, yeah, Ruud's dad, Christian, he was a pro tennis player. I think he might have cracked the top 50. So when Ruud was coming up, it was pretty interesting because it was always like, oh, are you going to do better than your dad? Are you going to do better than your dad? And then like, boom, top 10 players. So
Yeah. Was that
you
like
know
a
what?
conversation? Like obviously you have a Norwegian sort of family. Did you guys like talk about tennis? Did your parents know about Ruud when he was coming up?
Not, I wouldn't say when he was coming up, but I'd say like, yeah, when he was in around the top 50, my dad, he's still very active in the Norwegian pop culture. So he knew who he was. I personally didn't. I just knew like, oh, I'm gonna root for this guy Ruud whenever he plays because he's Norwegian. Not really
Mm.
expecting a whole lot. And then once he started getting good, he became one of my favorite players, as you know, and as other listeners of the show know. He's kind of recently been letting me down here, but well, that I digress. Anyway, yeah, no, he's a big deal in Norway, and my dad still like really roots for him. But either way, he lost the series. If you guys haven't watched it, spoiler alert.
Spoiler.
Yeah, spoiler. It was kind of exciting. I mean, it was definitely exhibition tennis. Like you had Ruud hitting through his legs or between his legs, a lot of tweeners. We saw excessive celebrations after every point. Runa even let one of the ball kids like play a point with his racket. We saw some underarm serves. So this was just, fun tennis to watch. But Runa did win the series because Ruud won the first, Runa won the second. And so since they were split, they had a super tiebreaker at the end. So they did first to 10 and Runa won 10-6.
So at least it was close. I mean, I guess
Yeah.
the Djokovic versus Del Potro match was
Yeah.
close as well. But my question after looking at something like this is, are exhibitions like this actually good for tennis? Because obviously it seems like we're getting more and more of these. I mean, one of the other things we talked about was another exhibition.
hmm
And my question is like, is it actually good for the sport overall? Because I think it's good for the top players. Like they're getting paid to show face and play in these matches that aren't super difficult and aren't tough on their bodies. And I think it's not bad for fans either, because obviously they want to see these top players. But I think it is bad for the majority of the players.
Hmm.
Like you look at who's playing in these exhibition matches, and it's maybe guys in the top 20, mainly guys in the top 10, honestly. Uh, and then you look at the rest of the top other 80 of the top 100, they're not playing in these exhibitions and they're not getting the chance to gain fans in these situations. So you kind of get these artificial matchups like this, where it's like, oh, the Nordic battle between these two guys. And it's not like a real tournament where you can get more shocking results, I guess.
Yeah, I think overall it is good for the sport just because, to your point about adding fans, like doing this in two countries that don't normally have a large fan base, Norway and Denmark. I think that's great to get it out there. Personally, me, an avid tennis fan, I would never watch an exhibition match. I just don't find it amusing. So I think you're really selling names and you're you're marketing to the public something fun, something like, oh, come bring your kids. Hopefully it's not too much money and you just kind of have a good time. You're not there to watch an epic battle. Now, on the other hand, I think instead of making them like for fun, you do what boxing does and promote the hell out of a match and have it be serious. Like an Alcaraz Sinner, it'll only be an exhibition, but you can make it serious. You could have it count towards ATP points. You could like sell out a whole arena for it. I think that would be pretty cool. Like build up hype. I don't think it's possible. I'm just saying what I would like.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the issue with that is if there's ATP points available, then all of a sudden it's not an exhibition, right?
Yeah, yeah. I don't know what, because I feel like the Six Kings Cup or Slam, whatever it's called, tried to do that, tried to make it competitive with the prize money. And I just feel like it still didn't grab my attention.
Yeah, well,
Like,
yeah, exactly. It's hard when these players are making millions of dollars to entice them really with money. Like
mhm,
obviously that they'll go and they'll play in it because they're getting paid a lot, but they're not going to be like, I have to win this match because really the extra money doesn't affect their lives that much. But when it's actually a match on the tour, they care about it because they care about like I guess their career and their legacy and all these things. And it's more meaningful to them. So I don't
mhm.
know if there's a way to make that sort of meaningful drive in a exhibition match.
Yeah, yeah. And you have a lot of players complain already about the season being too long. And then you can't really throw in exhibition matches throughout the season. You kind of have to wait until there's a lull, like now in December.
Yeah. I just yeah, the complaints about the length of the season. We had this discussion earlier because people
Hmm.
talked about it like, oh, the season they people want it to be shorter, but then they go play in these exhibition matches.
Hmm.
There's a kind of a controversy there. And who was it? Fritz that said, yeah, but in an exhibition match, you're not having to deal with all the stress of an actual tournament, which is true. But like I said earlier, it just takes the more players are playing an exhibition instead of actual tournaments, uh, you'll just get, I guess, a talent lull.
Hmm.
And I don't think that's really what you want. But
Yeah. Yeah. To close this one out, I do think it is good for the sport as long as it's good for the players. I think there's really only benefit here. But speaking of other exhibition matches, we have one tomorrow going on at MSG. It's actually called the MSG Cup. And that's going to be Shelton versus Alcaraz and then Navarro and Pegula playing. So this exhibition match, this cup, whatever you want to call it, actually started in 2008, ran for a decade up until 2018, and then there's been a hiatus, so they're picking it up this year, which I think will be pretty interesting. I'm here in New York, but I will not be attending. I was curious and I started looking at ticket prices and I saw everything, ranging from $30 in the nosebleeds all the way up to 1,200 bucks, like almost courtside. So I think for a pretty decent ticket, you would have to pay around like 250.
Yeah. I mean, that $30 ticket's going to be miserable though.
I was gonna
Like
say there's not even a point in
there's
going.
no way you get a good view of the match
Yeah.
from there, but yeah, I mean, like I said, I don't think they're really going to care, which is
Hmm.
tough when you're it's like a I can't think of the right way to describe it, but it's almost like a cosmetic of a tennis match. It's like
Hmm.
uh, a facade. They're going to go out there and you're going to see a Shelton versus Alcaraz match. But Shelton versus Alcaraz in this match is not even halfway comparable to Shelton and Alcaraz playing in the US Open third round or something like that.
Yeah, I hear you're saying. I kind of like that facade analogy because it's kind of like the Pro Bowl. Like you're getting a game, but it's for show. It's not competitive. You have players kind of like going 80, 90%. And I think that's what you get here too.
Maybe
And
even
going
less. Maybe
maybe
even less,
even
like
less. Yeah.
60%.
60%. I know because tennis is physically demanding. And we already know that Alcaraz has expressed grievances about the length of the season. And now he's going out here and playing an exhibition. So he's obviously not going to be doing it full force.
Yeah. I mean, for example, with Shelton, I bet I would if I was going to make a bet about this match, I would bet that he hits like a 145-mile-an-hour serve at some point in the first set, but doesn't break 135 in the second set.
Yeah, I think that's pretty accurate. I think this is a situation where exhibitions are good for the sport because you have New York City, like the biggest city in the US, and Ben Shelton, a rising American star, Emma Navarro, Jess Pegula, two American women who are at the top of their sport as well. And then Alcaraz, arguably like one of the greatest, not one of the greatest, but one of the best players right now. I think that's great to get the fans involved, get more engagement. They'll probably do a lot of marketing around it too. It's not just the match. So I think just overall growing the sport, it does benefit it.
100%. I mean, that was like the first thing I said. It's great for the fans and the top players,
Hmm.
but I don't know if it's great for like Mackenzie McDonald, who's sitting at like
Hmm.
126.
Yeah.
But alrighty, you ready to hop into segments?
Yeah. Let's do it. Hey guys, before we jump in, we have some exciting news. We recently partnered with TruePro. They're a great place to buy strings, grips, and tennis apparel. Use discount code Painting Lines, that's one word, for 20% off store wide. You can find the link in our bio.
Sounds good. What's new in tennis? What'd you see this week?
What is new in tennis? So I saw FAA propose to his girlfriend recently. So congratulations to him. And then I saw Rude do it as well. I'd say about a week ago, a week and a half. So two guys getting married or getting engaged. That is pretty relevant news now with, the lull in the season and not much tennis to report on. Um,
Super exciting. Yeah,
Super exciting, I
this
know.
is like the biggest news of the year for me.
Yeah, and it's funny because they're officially at that point in their career where their, marital status is news. It's news to people.
I guess.
But I also saw a funny joke during one of the press conferences of the Nordic Battle. Ruud and Rune were sitting there, and a reporter asked Rune about the high tax rate in Denmark. And Ruud just kind of made a joke and was like, "Hey, don't answer that." Like, because he caught under fire for previously saying that the Norwegian tax rate was too high and like what he was going to do, all that. So I thought that was pretty funny. I think they both will just end up living in Monaco at some point anyway.
Tax haven.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know. I mean, it's kind of funny just to think about them asking these professional athletes like, "Oh, what do you think about these tax things?" It's like, dude, I'm an
Right.
athlete. I'm not a politician.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. What about you? What did you see this week?
I mean, to be honest, I feel like this whole episode was kind of a big what's new. But I guess the most interesting thing to me was seeing that Fields is returning to Jeddah this year. Obviously, he was a big favorite last year, didn't really get it done. Now he's a top 20 guy in the world. And I remember last year, some top guys didn't play. Like, I think Shelton didn't play. I don't know if he was I think he was in the age range and just decided not
Yeah,
to play last year.
it's 20
I
years
think
old?
20. Yeah. Um, but either way, I guess there's really no downside for him just because, like, obviously, it's not a big deal in terms of if he loses it. But I just wonder about like whether he feels a ton of pressure going into that. And then also João
Oh, you wonder
Fonseca.
if feels pressure?
Yeah, exactly, exactly. But João Fonseca taking the last spot in Jeddah, which is pretty cool given the fact that he only turned pro like early this year. So interesting to see that he was able to get up into the top 8 guys under 20 that quickly.
Yeah, let's go. Shout out Brazil.
100%.
I hope they do that combine like they did last year. It was so funny watching, like Feast. I think he cleaned up
Yeah,
and
let's see if
won. Like,
Mickelson can beat his
yeah,
scores from last
Mickelson, and
year.
then Dominic Stricker was also terribly like unagile.
Yeah.
But no, this will be cool. We'll be doing a recap on this. I'm excited. So, bet of the week.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't really have a bet this week just because there's no real tournaments, to be honest. What about
Yeah, I
you?
didn't have one. No, I just kind of checked the lines briefly because I was gonna see if they had anything for the MSG Cup, but they don't. So I just saw Zverev was plus 1,000 to win the Australian Open. And I think this was a little enticing to me because I feel like you can place the bet and then cash it out when he makes it to the quarters or the semis and just kind of take the money off the table.
Yeah, I mean, that works until he loses round one, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And
But
also,
still, at
yeah,
plus 1,000, like
yeah, I
there's
guess
a lot of
the
value there.
question is yeah, how much does it go down
Hmm.
like as the tournament goes on?
Yeah, yeah. But match of the week, I also don't think there's really anything to report on. We kind of gave you the rundown of these exhibition matches. If you really need, you can go watch the highlights.
Yeah,
But
exactly. I'll take Djokovic versus Del Po, and you can have the Nordic Battle.
yeah, exactly. I mean, the Nordic Battle, low key, the first one was intense because they split sets and then they played a tiebreaker, and Ruud like went down pretty heavily in the tiebreaker and had to claw his way back and won.
Impressive.
All right, and that's the show. If you're not already subscribed, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. You can find us on Instagram, TikTok, YouTube at Painting Lines Podcast. Feel free to shoot us a DM or email us any questions or thoughts at paintinglinespodcast@gmail.com.